This video is brought to you by BetUS Sportsbook and Casino.
On tonight's Cover One Buffalo podcast, we are going to be breaking down week 2 of training camp. But first, our guys, Handsome Jack.
Broadcasting live to Bills Mafia worldwide with Greg Tompsett and Aaron Quinn.
Welcome to the NFL. Doesn't matter what's happened before today. Today's a brand new day. It's a brand new season.
Your number one podcast for objective Buffalo Bills coverage. No matter where you are, we got you covered.
Good evening and welcome to the Cover One Buffalo podcast. You are joining your host, Greg Tompsett, along with my partner in crime, Aaron Quinn. Aaron, did you know that we're now powered by BetUS?
I did know that because you forced me to make that Sonic signature. So I knew this was coming. It's also up here in the top corner in case people need to see that too. So yeah, exciting stuff as we get into the football season here. We were talking a little offline, so I'm excited for this relationship and to talk a little bit about people sleeping on the Bills, maybe.
Yeah. So, obviously, as we shared and as you heard in the opening here, we are now powered by BetUS. And, you guys know each week when we do the preview matchups, we go through, what the odds are and what those things are. And now we'll be able to share those updated odds from our friends at BetUS. And as I was going through, I'm like, well, we're sponsored by them now. We should probably look and see what they say about the Bills. So I actually went in and looked at it and was trying to figure out all right, so how do things look? And for anyone who's not familiar with betting odds, early on, obviously they'll do lines when we get into the games where they'll give you a point spread on each of the game if you're supposed to win by field goal or a touchdown, and we'll get into all that as the season goes. But early on, some of the most interesting are season win totals. Like, what do they think the Bills' record are going to be? So they have some low ones and some high ones. If you can, bet, do you think the Bills will win just over 8.5 games? You're not sure if they're going to have that good of a season. You got to bet a little bit extra, $25 to win $10 for them to go 9-8. If you're really confident, you could bet on them to go 13-4, and you'd win $40 if you bet $10. That's pretty good. They have odds for the division, but the one that stood out to me was their season win total. So one, and I'll ask you, Aaron, after I kind of explain this, I think they set the right number. 10.5 is actually pretty good for me. If you ask me, I think I'd pick 11-6, but I wouldn't be shocked if there is a lot of turnover. We could stumble early in the season. 10-7 is not crazy. I also don't think it's crazy. They could go 12-5 or 13-4. I don't think it's, going to be crazy, but 9-8, bad things can happen. So I think 10.5 is a fair number. What I am shocked by is more people have bet the Bills under than any other team win total under other than the Cowboys. The Cowboys has a lot more people have bet it, but out of all the rest of the teams, all 32 teams, there is more, they'll call it juice or worse odds on having to bet the Bills under total than 30 other teams. It's the Cowboys, the Bills, and then everybody else. I was just shocked that many people, and it's public money or whatever you call square money. I just was shocked that many people don't believe in the Bills. I feel like we're back home. Nobody believes in us. This feels warm and fuzzy to me.
Yeah, I love it. Personally, the last couple of off seasons at this period of time was like trying to fight off the national media of like, leave us alone. Like, the pressure is too much. Can they live up to the pressure? So it's nice to not have that. I think it's 100%. This is where the one issue I have with trying to figure out betting is I think the public's way wrong on the Buffalo Bills. I think 10.5, that line's good. I also don't know that. I think people will see 10.5 and think like, oh, well, Bills fans will be like, oh, they're going to win 13 games. Like when they're having a good season, they're winning 13. That's hard to do. And I think we've taken for granted some of the seasons we've had recently. I think when you win your division, a lot of times teams win around 10, 11 games and they win their division. Like, that's not uncommon in the NFL. And so 10.5 wins, I think, is fair. I would bet
division this year.
It's a better division. I bet whoever comes out of the AFC East is probably a 11-win team if I had to put money on it right today. So I think that's a fair line. But I do think where the public is this narrative that we've been talking about here of what they lost, especially on Black Monday there, where it was Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde and big names. And some of them were legitimate losses, but I think internally as we went through the roster and we've talked about this. I don't think the blow is as big. It's just that maybe everybody doesn't know the names that are replacing some of the pieces and that they're not common household names, but the Bills have done a good job building internally. And so I think I would never give betting advice on where to go, but I would bet against the public in this scenario and take that opportunity to where that line is shifting because of public perception. I would take some opportunity to play against that because I think 11 wins is very fair.
Yeah, I think that's about right. As I scroll down here, they have odds for the Hall of Fame game tomorrow. If you're an absolute sicko,
Send that to my brother.
You want to bet on the Hall of Fame preseason kickoff game?
I got a buddy.
Odds for that. God bless you if you want to bet on the Hall of Fame game. But if you do, you can go out here to BetUS. And obviously, we're excited to be partnering with them for this season. You'll be able to go out there. They have 125% deposit match on your first 3 deposits of $2,000. So if you go in there, they'll give you more than double your money to mess around and have a great time. I actually kind of like I like picking the season win totals because that's fun to trend as the season goes and see if you like pick who's going to have a good year or bad year. So that's a fun way I like to do it, more than riding the wave of like picking every single game each week. So I like doing that. I've had some success doing that. I'm going to do some more of that with BetUS, but we're excited to be partnering with them this year, and you'll hear more about them as we go. You can see more of their info in our show description.
Before we get, pull that back up.
Oh.
Real quick, this is off the cuff here. Do they got Von Miller sack total?
Not yet. So
okay,
we'll save some of that for some of the other shows.
Choo-choo, we're coming.
They have obviously they have a ton of Josh Allen. They have a ton of they have more
Bills starting safety. Do they have a?
They don't have the Bills. So like passing touchdowns. They have a bunch of receiving ones. They have both Kincaid, Keon Coleman, some different ones there. I was actually getting kind of sneaky. I was looking for some Curtis Samuel ones, and they don't have those ones up yet. I think that could get sneaky. They have a lot of
Coach
James
of the
Cook
year
ones,
where's
rushing touchdown and coaching. Yeah, heck, we can do this on the fly. Because
if Bills win the division where the public perception's down on them, could this be his year?
Oh wow, you get pretty good odds. Sean McDermott is 40-1 to win Coach of the Year. There you go. If you want to be able to take a long shot, bet on the Bills, and if the Bills would certainly hit the win total over, bet those ones together. There you go. Bet the win total and Sean McDermott winning Coach of the Year. You can get yourself a heck of a payoff there.
Look at that.
So that's our financial advice. If you try to sue us, you have to speak to our lawyer, William Mattar. He'll be able to speak to
William's over there like, do not call me for that.
Do not say anything. So obviously this has been, the vibes have been really good so far through camp, and all of a sudden, for the first time, we've kind of hit our first real roadblock here. And the biggest concern with camp injuries is obviously a serious one is bad. We have seen a couple ACLs around the league. Obviously, the Bills haven't had anything that serious yet. But the second most worrisome is when you get the cluster injuries, if you get multiple at the same position. So all of a sudden, the Bills have veteran safety Mike Edwards, who is a guy who, we debated on how high his ceiling was, but was a nice floor safety blanket coming in, could start week 1 and wait and see what happens with Cole Bishop. He has a hammy. And it sounds like, we've learned McDermott talked about it as a week-to-week injury, which means at minimum a pretty serious hamstring injury. I'm going to take that as, usually that's 3+ weeks. That probably
I'm thinking 3 to 4 right now without
any most of camp probably taking you almost all the way up to the season. We very likely won't see him in any meaningful, or probably in any action in preseason. I think 3 to 4 sounds about right. Well, then the next day, we now see rumor of Cole Bishop is coming off the field. They had comments of his arm was hanging, favoring it significantly, and then people saw him with it heavily wrapped. I think that's about what it is. I've seen some of the Kyle Trimble reacted to a video we saw where he came down pretty hard and caught himself most of his weight coming down there, and that that could be a wrist, that could be an elbow, that could be a shoulder. It's hard to know what's there. I have a feeling we'll find out a little bit more tomorrow, when I assume Sean McDermott will have another press conference going into practice tomorrow, on Thursday, going into the red and blue scrimmage on Friday night. But now we're at we'll leave that indefinitely. Let's assume it's something serious enough that he had to have it wrapped, but, we won't speculate beyond there. We're now at cluster injury territory. So in back-to-back days, the Bills have signed veteran safety Kareem Jackson. That was a guy who was a pretty elite corner with the Texans, converted over to safety with the Broncos, but he made that conversion at age 31 back in 2019. So he's now 36. That's stretching it. Eric did some work, said that, he still seems to have it upstairs, and in a pinch, he'd be okay with him being on the field. It kind of gives me a little AJ Klein vibes. And then Terrell Burgess, who is a guy who's actually a pretty exciting third round pick for the Rams, then bounced around with the Giants and the Commanders. He's played, 44 games in the last 4 years. He actually was playing ahead of Taylor Rapp at one point in LA. And he's now been brought in. So, I don't think either of those names are guys who are like, oh, that's, a locked in starting safety. They must think this is serious because we've signed a replacement. But adding 2 safeties in 2 days is a thing. Where is your head at with the situation with the 2 injuries, with their response, and with the level of player that they brought in that response?
Yeah, I don't love it, right? Obviously, safety was a huge talking point this offseason with losing Jordan Poyer, Micah Hyde. And I will say that I think a lot of the conversation about those 2 and replacing those 2 is, I don't view it necessarily the same as a lot of people do. I've seen how much of a step they lost, I think, is overstated. I'm not going to say that they were at their all-pro levels or anything, but they still played good football, and they had the ability to process. They were asked to do some different things than they had done in the past. Jordan was doing a little bit more of that role of the in dime looks coming down, playing that way, but they still played good football. And those are big shoes to fill. And so there's a lot of responsibility and a lot of pressure on the safeties going into this year before the injuries. I think optic wise, from the way I view it, the team was really banking on it being Rapp and Edwards were going to be your starters who had vet presence that were going to be able to start. And then you had a nice situation behind that with a Damar Hamlin who has had starting reps, and you could bring Cole Bishop along. Like, either Bishop took the job and ran with it, or he could be what kind of Sean McDermott talked about, is maybe a situational guy that he's so athletic and he has so much upside that you kind of work him in and you get him in and you get him involved. But now, sort of all those plans, like that Mike Tyson quote of like, everybody's got to play until they get punched in the face. This room's been punched in the face a little bit here. And so it stinks. I said it on Twitter earlier. They're almost frustrating enough injuries with like Edwards, because I think they want him to start. That hammy isn't a serious enough injury to like go out and get what we're seeing in the comments. Go get Justin Simmons, like go answer this and get a safety that's going to be your starter. I think the Bills want Edwards to be the starter on the deal that they got him here on. I don't think they want to break in case of emergency and stretch themselves to the point of getting a Simmons. While I would advocate for a move like that, I would love to have Justin Simmons in that position. I think this injury is just not enough to do the break in case of emergency thing. And then you compound that with a injury to Bishop as well to thin out that room. When I heard that they were bringing in people for tryouts, I was kind of like, man, maybe Bishop's thing isn't that serious, and they're just kind of getting a little bit ahead on the work and getting some guys in where, like, if another injury happens, but then seeing them actually make the signing of Burgess makes me think that the Bishop thing is maybe a little bit more serious than I first anticipated, and that he might miss some extended time, and that at the very least they need a camp body to get through these reps, because it doesn't seem like they're giving Cam Lewis a ton of safety reps. He's more going to be that backup nickel role, and if they have to, they'll put him as safety. I haven't heard a ton about D. Delaney. I know he's learning the system. He's new to the system as well, but he's in there as well and on this competition. So it's worrisome. But I do think, I think Damar Hamlin can start. I think that he's a floor player, similar how I've advocated for Dane Jackson and Levi Wallace. Like, fans aren't going to want to hear that. It's not the most ideal situation. But I do think he can. And the way Eric specifically described what they're doing at safety with some of the pressures and looks, I think Hamlin actually excels at that part of his game, is coming in on the blitz and being that kind of weapon. He and Rapp could be interesting in that. But I do think Mike Edwards is going to be back. It's a hamstring injury. As long as it's not one of these like really severe ones, or maybe a long nagging one that just lasts on and off throughout the year, I think he's going to be back. And then it will be a more steady ship at that position. But right now it doesn't feel great this early into camp with all the unknown at the position.
Yeah, I'm obviously we need to know a little more in what's going on. We'll find out more information tomorrow. The team is always pretty guarded. I'm not sure how much we're going to find out about Cole Bishop.
Sure.
I think if it's something really serious, we're going to know in the tone and the language he uses. If it's, hey, we're not sure, it's unfortunate, but it's not, even anything that'll impact him for week 1. I don't know what's there. So, and someone saying he's painting Cole Bishop's house, right? That would be lovely. So we'll find out more tomorrow and see what's going on, where those things net out, and then you take the corresponding action. I do think it's very worrisome from a depth standpoint. I think one more thing, and all of a sudden now your hand is forced, and all of a sudden someone like Justin Simmons' agent should be calling Brandon Beane and being like, hey, you guys have some plans for this season. It sure looks like you could use my client. The Bills have used up a lot of those chips. There are not a lot of restructure. There's not even a lot of glass to break.
Wait, is this a here to help?
So let's talk through it as our William Mattar here to help.
It sounds like you're about to help us out here.
There are some things we can move around, but there's not a lot. There's a little bit with Matt Milano.
So there's some money in the banana.
A little bit with Dion Dawkins. There's a little bit with Ed Oliver. With those 3, I can bundle us together $5 million. I think that we have a little bit more than what we need going into the season, but you got to remember, we're going to release some people that have guaranteed money. We're going to release some people we gave a signing bonus. We're going to stock 16 people on the practice squad, including we are a team that's going to do the maximum 6 veterans on the practice squad. Those guys cost a little bit more. A practice squad spot now is almost like $350,000 a piece. So the
I would love to be on the
not
practice squad.
It sounds lovely. Although I think you have to block Von Miller in practice and things like that, so it's probably not super awesome. Like Ed Oliver doesn't seem
let him
super
just
fun
get
to
by
practice
me.
against.
Yeah.
But either way, I'd make it work. So we could do it. Like anyone who tries to tell you that we can't sign Justin Simmons is not being truthful. We can figure out a way to make it work, but it would hurt. Like I don't know. We're pretty late into camp. He's to be completely honest, he was waiting for this exact kind of scenario. His ideal scenario as a free agent who waited out the musical chairs and he's now playing the game of chicken. His perfect scenario is a contending team has multiple injuries at the safety position. Well, the Buffalo Bills have had multiple injuries at the safety position. Like, this is his perfect scenario to be like, well, I do still want to play. I only want to play for a contender, but I still want the $10 million I expected to get going into free agency. Well, if you free up $5 million with those 3 restructures I talked about, you can basically give 5 of that to him now and kick 5 of it to future years and spread it out. And honestly, like $2.5 million next year and $2.5 million the year after, that's not a backbreaking amount of money. That's what I mean by the idea that we can make it work. We could figure this out. We could make it work. The impatient, greedy part of me just wants him to do it now, because honestly, Justin Simmons is better than every single person in that room tomorrow. Like, he's an upgrade over all those people being healthy. So that's not a fallback, safety net. That's an upgrade. Like, I'll be completely honest. Justin Simmons is better than what Micah Hyde, Jordan Poyer were last year. Justin Simmons was still playing at all pro level now. So Justin Simmons would be an upgrade over anything that we had. So I'm not going to feel bad about being excited about the possibility there. However, we did make multiple investments. We had 5 roster caliber guys when we did our breakdown. So I'm not going to be so rash as to say, oh my God, I can't believe they haven't already signed Justin Simmons, because if Mike Edwards is 2, 3, 4 weeks, but is back for the beginning of the season, 4 weeks is still the end of August. 4 weeks means he has a week and a half before the first game. And Cole Bishop is, not awesome, but he also only missed a handful of things. Well, that basically tells us that, hey, the starting safeties in week 1 are Taylor Rapp and Damar Hamlin, and we got to be honest with ourselves. Damar Hamlin could have won the starting spot anyways against Mike Edwards and Cole Bishop. So we would still have Edwards back for the season. We still have Bishop back for the season. It wasn't the fun competition we wanted, but it was there. In my opinion, anything in that realm, even if I want Justin Simmons, I don't think it's worth doing there. If either Edwards or Bishop are more serious, are IR possible, and again, we have no reason to think that's the case, but if something comes out that these are more serious injuries, or God forbid, we had another injury to either Taylor Rapp or Damar Hamlin and made it a serious cluster injury situation where we lost multiple at the same spot, I don't care how much leverage Justin Simmons' agent has, you would have to figure out a way to make that work and splurge, and you would have to break all the glass that isn't broken, because this would be an emergency.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'd advocate for Justin Simmons as well. So where I come back to is a couple just more philosophical things with the Bills and the way they operate is, one, asset allocation positionally. Like, the Bills are able to get more out of less at safety and defensive back than any other position. So I do feel confident that they can make it work with the guys they have. But to your point, like, Taylor Rapp goes down, you're really in a pickle. Like, Delaney and Hamlin, I don't know how long you can patch that together. Like, you really got to make a move. And then like, yeah, so you have the asset allocation side to it, and just, I trust them to put these guys in that best position. And then we talked about it a little bit too with the front seven. I think that plays into this as well. Is, I don't know that you need big stars back there, because I think the front seven is going to generate a lot of pressure and take a lot of the pressure off of this back half of the defense. And so that's going to play another big part of this. And then another thing we got to think, we talk about Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde and who they became once they were with the Bills. But going into that first year, they were in the same spot as a Burgess type player.
Micah Hyde was basically the Taylor Rapp contract. I went back and looked at it. He was basically the Taylor Rapp contract. It was that level of like $3 to $4 million, could be incentives up to $5 million. Sure. He was not a $8 or $10 million guy when he got here.
And he had some flashes. A lot of it though, like, Green Bay didn't really know how to use him. He was kind of a nickel. Like, nobody knew he was going to become an all-pro safety in the NFL. And Poyer was like kind of a special.
We didn't know he was going to be a safety when we signed him.
Right.
Like, I thought he was a nickel when we signed him, and then in the press conference, it was like, oh, we're going to play him as safety. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah. And Poyer, like, not a lot of people knew who Jordan Poyer was. He was a special teamer, and he had, like, been with part of the coaching staff, and they saw the scheme fit. And I think that's one thing we have to pay attention to with this Bills team. And especially when you're talking about defensive backs, like Christian Benford
especially their NFL, the pro scouting group. The pro scouting group knows what they're looking for.
Definitely. I mean, even on the college side, like, a Christian Benford slipped through the cracks from everybody else, but he's a scheme fit, and it fit exactly where they need him to, and he does his job. He does his 1 of 11. So I think some of these guys, again, maybe we don't know the names, or maybe we have a perception of the player going into this, season. I think Damar Hamlin's one of those guys. Of Poyer and Hyde were sort of in that spot 3-4 years into their careers before they got here and became Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde. And Taylor Rapp, I've been low on Taylor Rapp. He might also be one of those guys who is just about to break out. The Bills are super high on him. Coach McDermott's real high on him. Babbage loves him. So I'm missing something. They're seeing something in that room that I don't necessarily see. I see it a little bit with Damar Hamlin more than others. And so maybe they have some guys that they do believe in, and they are just trying to patch through and get through this phase because they have guys that they believe fit the scheme. So I think we wait this out a little bit. To your point, I'm going to be really tuning in to McDermott's next press conference to try to get the vibe on where the sense of urgency is. I'm sure he's going to be blasted with questions specifically about this safety position, what's going on. I don't know that we'll get a full, truthful answer. Like, Bishop has this injury, and
we're going to have to interpret the McDermottese for sure.
There will be some of that. But I think we'll be able to walk away with like, okay, we just kind of, maybe we have to get through a month here, and then the ship will be righted. Or like, holy crap, everybody start tagging Justin Simmons in their mentions as much as possible. Those are the two options I see.
Yeah. So again, I have been as aggressive as anyone, at least on the Cover One staff, about the Justin Simmons things, but I've wanted him the whole time, and I've had less confidence and less, surety is what you and Eric and Anthony and you guys are right in that I should give more benefit of the doubt to this coaching staff, to this
Trust
front
the
office
process.
specifically.
Right.
I should trust the process specifically in this area. Like there are areas that it's okay to poke at with the front office that we're not flawless in our draft choices, signings in certain areas. We're pretty freaking good in the secondary. Like there have not been a lot of misses. There have been lots of hits, and there has been a repeated pattern of positive return on investment of getting more out of guys than what we got for them.
Keeping a good floor.
Yeah, UDFAs, late day 3 picks, low value signings, all turning into more than what we paid for them. Not everybody's been an all pro like Hyde and Poyer, but Taron Johnson was a 4th round pick, all pro. Tre'Davious White was supposed to be good. He was a 1st round pick, but he was good. Yeah. Hyde and Poyer, way more return on investment. Levi Wallace, Dane Jackson, like those guys have been better than what they are. Christian Benford has a chance to be much better than what he was drafted as. They should earn some benefit of the doubt. Like I said, I don't see this as much as a panic recovery as
the opportunity
to
get what you wanted.
Yeah, I wanted this in the first place. Yeah. So now it's like, hey, look, we need the guy I wanted all along. Why don't you go get him now?
Sure.
So part of it is, I'm just wanting to be right from what I wanted months ago.
I think collectively we would all celebrate it. It would be it's a good thing to do. I just don't know if they'll allocate the assets to that. It'll make everything a lot tighter for Brandon Beane
correct
in the rest of this season. And that's a tough decision for him to make.
We took a lot of medicine with Diggs. We took a lot of medicine with Black Wednesday. Like we ate a ton of money when that happened.
As confident as
he didn't do that to then also splurge a little bit too, because we were pretty conservative in free agency. Now, but Curtis Samuel was a real contract. There was, a couple moves here or there that were some real expenditures, but we did an awful lot of, I think, good value signings. Yes. But Dwayne Smoot was a really nice sneaky value signing. We were pretty cheap on Mack Hollins. We were pretty cheap to bring back David Edwards. We were pretty cheap to bring back Epinesa. We were pretty cheap to, bring back a lot of the guys that we had, Austin Johnsons and, different positions like that. Like we were pretty careful on a lot of these things. Taylor Rapp was not a ton of
a couple
money.
Pay cuts.
Yeah, multiple pay cuts of guys that, we don't know what the or else was, but Dawson Knox and Von Miller gave back a pretty healthy amount of money. We took an awful lot of medicine. So as Ron brought up here, I'd be pumped if we signed Simmons, but we are already $61 million in dead cap. That's $61 million in medicine. You don't take that medicine and make those hard decisions to then turn around and be like, well, let's splurge a little bit. Like it's, they already did all the hard stuff. They're super clean going into next year. We're not going to carry over any garbage into next year. They could have done that. They could have kicked the can down the road with Diggs. They could, we trade him for a 2025 draft pick. We could have waited till after June 1st to do that. Like we could have waited and done that. They could have kept pay cuts and kept some of the money with Poyer, Hyde, Morris, all those guys that they released. They could have pushed those out as the post June 1st moves. They were pretty careful on all those different things. We're going to have that money to spend next year. We're going to have a nice chunk of money to spend next year. You can trade some of that in, but I think they're going to try their darndest not to.
And on that real quick, before we get out of this topic, in trading some of that in, I know you and I have been with Milano thinking that he is going to get back to some semblance of what we expect out of Matt Milano. But there's questions from people that I think are legitimate questions of if he is. Are you kicking the can on Milano down the road and a restructure would lock you in further, right, into that where like, are you kind of want to wait and see if he is going to be back to Matt Milano?
Yeah, I think that's a very, very fair question in that, I feel better than some of the like doom, things that are out there of how he I've seen some people say definitively he will never be the same and things like that.
Yeah.
I think that's
he gave up like one rep to Ray Davis and people are like, oh, he's done.
And then immediately comes back and locks up Dalton Kincaid in the next rep. And but anyways, so people have gone way, way too far. But I will say there is some risk. Like he is turning 30 and coming off a serious injury. And I'd like to see, I've seen flashes of him being the same old guy, but I'd like to see that consistently. And as Ron there says, linebackers do age pretty well. Like that's not
Yep.
an unreasonable thing. But I also don't know that I feel so confident that I want to kick some of his money down the road and make it harder to move on from him if we had to. We have this year and 2 more years of contract left.
Definitely part of his conversation.
Yeah, it's part of that convo, and you don't want to limit your options because you panicked in a short-term thing. So, with all that said, hopefully they sign Justin Simmons tomorrow, and this will be great.
Yes. Yep.
All right. So I think that's enough, negative things. We've got a lot of good things going on here.
Yeah.
So it seems like every day there's more positive. Like, did we
Everybody
hit on something?
eats.
Did we hit on something special with Keon Coleman? Like, a lot of it, I know they're just getting pads on, but like he went up and like mossed Kyer Elam to the point where like Sal Capaccio was like losing it. He didn't understand what Elam could have done better. He was in perfect position, and Keon Coleman just went up over top of him, reached down, plucked it, brought it back, toe tapped, and fell and went out of bounds for the touchdown. And I think a lot of the things that we knew there was going to be some acclimation on the route running and separation, but like we were hoping that the body control and the elite jumping and explosive athleticism would give us some flashes of, hey, maybe someday he could be that T. Higgins kind of guy. And he's making an awful lot of T. Higgins plays in camp. Like I feel I was cautiously optimistic after the draft. I was hopeful, but I knew some of the red flags and I knew some of the things that, hey, separation matters a lot in the NFL. There are not that many T. Higgins, DeAndre Hopkins, Anquan Boldens. There are not that many guys who don't have the elite athleticism, but have all the other things and it translates, and don't have the high end speed. And he's checking all the boxes I was hoping for, and then some.
Yeah, I think he's doing the things at a high level that we expected that he would eventually do at a high level, right? Like that is why you brought a guy like this in, is to make those catches that we saw against Elam, to make some of those crazy contorting your body, going up and grabbing it catches. I'll push back on Ron. I don't think he looks fast. I don't know that I've seen fast out of him. I think he's athletic. Like he doesn't.
I think he's more explosive, and people took the slow 40 time to be bad athlete.
Yes.
And he's not a bad athlete. He is a very good athlete. He's not a fast athlete.
He doesn't. Yeah. And I still am seeing some, Eric has pointed out a number of times, but this is also, it's not a negative against him. Like
it is what he is.
And I've been taught in how you scout and process players isn't to like focus on the negative. That's the easy stuff. But he's got a ways to go in learning the route tree and getting some of that stuff and building confidence. But to me, I think what I'm seeing out of him, which I guess I didn't find in the draft process and know in the draft process, and I should know better because this happened with Josh Allen. I'm going to harken back to that Josh Allen. We had this conversation back when the Bills drafted Josh, of some analysts being like, oh, he's a Jamarcus Russell. And we were kind of pointing out, well, like Jamarcus Russell was a Jamarcus Russell because he didn't practice. He didn't put in the work. Yeah. And I think Keon Coleman could be one of those typical, like, oh, he's just big and he's not going to get open. He's not going to separate if he didn't put
it's
in
okay. Like some people tried to go, it was Florida State, big guy, not fast. People went to Kelvin Benjamin
type. Sure. But I think he is doing everything he can to be the best NFL caliber wide receiver he can be. And he's in a situation where there isn't as much pressure internally on him to come in and be wide receiver one as like people I think on the outside assumed when he was drafted, because again, if we want to talk about the whole wide receiver room, like Curtis Samuel looks pretty sneaky awesome. Like he has flown under the radar here.
Joe Brady has a plan. You talk about on our BetUS new sponsor. The moment they have a Curtis Samuel over under for catches and yards, I'm going to smash the over. As soon as I can find it.
There's so much to this offense right now where I think it isn't everybody's going to eat, and there isn't pressure on one. It's almost the what Green Bay has, which is the perfect situation for a Keon Coleman to come in, where he's going to have some big games, and there's going to be games where nobody can guard him, and he makes 2 or 3 crazy down the field, big explosive plays. And fantasy wise, he puts up huge numbers. I think Bills are probably going to have a wide receiver core that drives fantasy dudes nuts, where it's like, 1 week Curtis Samuel goes off and has a game. Next week it's Keon Coleman. Shakir's going to have a game. Dalton Kincaid's going to have multiple good games. But there's going to be all these guys. But it's a perfect situation for Keon to come in and not have to be the number one every single week, develop into a player, but still making these splash plays along the way that the Bills are really going to need and rely on. And so he's definitely building more of the excitement on me. I have been pumping the brakes on where is he going to be at year one. But as we get into camp, as pads come on and stuff like that, I'm getting excited for the possibility of him being exactly what he looked like in the college highlights.
Yeah, I think at least having that initial reassurance has calmed a lot of my apprehension, because part of it, I felt like, hey, okay, everybody's going to eat and there's Kincaid will kind of be the number one guy. Like, that sounds good, but I want to see it happen. So the fact that Samuel has looked as hoped and as promised, the fact that Keon Coleman has looked everything we were hoping would happen, but even sooner. And I think you made a really great point that people don't think about, in that, we don't talk about Keenan Allen mossing people. We don't talk about Tyler Lockett with contested catches. We don't talk about T. Higgins roasting people with a Stevie Johnson route and creating separation, because nobody cares, because that's not what they're good at, because they're really, really good at other things. You don't have to be, is it nice when you have a Justin Jefferson and AJ Brown and Jamar Chase who are awesome at everything? Sure, that's great. Like that's wonderful. There's 4 or 5 of those guys on earth. Stephon Diggs wasn't a Moss guy that was going to go up and big boy somebody for a contested catch, but he was awesome at what he was good at. So, focusing, tell me what they're good at, the famous Belichick line, don't tell me what they can't do, tell me what they can do.
Yep.
And we're seeing earlier than I expected what Keon Coleman can do, and that's fun and exciting.
Yep.
Our last little point on the wide receiver thing.
Shavers hive.
So the other side of that Shavers hive coin is, have you heard one thing about Marquez Valdez-Scantling yet?
No.
Like, would you know he was on the team if you didn't know he was on the team already?
No. He's struggling to acclimate, I would think. Maybe
I actually need to go sit and ask Eric and Anthony, because this is the first year in forever I haven't physically been at camp. Like, is it that the ball just hasn't made his way, or is he struggling? Like, I don't know. Like, is he doing bad things, or is he just not doing things that are standing out positively? But he's running his routes, he's running his clear routes, he's catching it when the ball comes to him. Right. It just hasn't been highlight stuff that it hasn't been huge, monster touchdowns and things like that. So people aren't like posting the highlights, but he's not messing up. He's not dropping the ball. He's not doing dumb stuff. I don't know if I would know he was on the team if I didn't see his name on the roster.
Yeah, and that is a tough part of camp when you're not there, or even if you are there, but you don't know what to look for necessarily, because like this is something Bruce Nolan and I discuss a lot on the defensive backside of like the plays the guy's not targeted. How's he play on those plays? And that's one of the problems with PFF grades, right? They're not really grading on the plays you're not targeted. And a lot for pro scouts and the team and the coaches are evaluated on the plays where a guy isn't necessarily targeted. And you do get so much hype around the targets in training camp because the video goes out and everybody hypes it up and it's exciting to see and the team gets amped. And so that's a tough evaluation part of this right now for Valdez-Scantling. I'm going to assume the way it's going right now, he's the kind of player and has the skill set of easy to get lost in the shuffle of where you've got some of these other guys and getting open and getting the plays and Josh looking those ways. And so I don't know if it's some of that just getting lost in the shuffle, but that's not good for him either way, right? Like if you're not getting the targets and not getting that trust with Josh. So it'll be interesting to see. We still also do have plenty of time, right? Like the games haven't even started. The pads just came on this week. Yeah. So some of that separation is also going to start to occur here over the next week.
Yeah. We have time. We have time for plenty of that. I'm not necessarily worried about that. I do think somebody in the comments talked about him kind of being a gamer, and you talked about his role is, in the full speed element of the game, being afraid of his deep speed and the clear out routes, and that, yeah, we might only throw it to him 3 or 4 times in the game, but you better be ready, because if he hits for one, it's 40 yards because you weren't ready. So I do think some of that translates better in a full field real game scenario situation, whereas I don't know in practice they're running a ton of, hey, Josh, drop back and chuck it 60 yards. That's just not a practice scenario of what's there.
Yes.
So I'm open to the fact that his role still has value, but I just, the fact that we're hearing like a lot of Mack Hollins buzz, and Tyrell Shavers buzz.
Well, he doesn't
and
wear
I'm even-
shoes, so
yeah,
that's
he's a fun character, but the usage is
Yeah,
way more
for
than I
sure.
expect. Like, I even text back and forth with Anthony, just one-on-one, and was like, hey, is this Mack Hollins stuff because he's a fun character and the hair and the shirt and the no shoes, or is like he actually a thing? And he said, I was in the exact same mindset. I thought it was just because he's a fun character. And he's like, he got more balls than Keon and Curtis Samuel. Like
Yeah.
he was
the
getting a ton. And I was like, oh, okay. I didn't expect that.
The problem is not that I'm going to take a shot at the entire beat, but I'm going to take a shot at a good chunk of the beat. Is they're just posting the hair and the no shoes and that he eats funny snacks, and they're not talking about his actual usage and how he's being used in this offense, because I think he's what I think we wanted Trent Sherfield to be.
Yes.
When they signed him, and
like,
I think
he's a special team superstar who could contribute as a receiver.
Block and
Mack Hollins is that.
Yes,
Mack Hollins is that.
Yep.
Yeah, it's really well said. Really, really well said. So one last thing, before we I got a couple notes on some of the press conferences, just because some guys crack me up. We want to let you guys know we got some fun, new, exciting things going on. We are kind of dusting off our OnePass memberships. We've talked about it in the past, all kinds of cool things. We've added some new fun things. We're going to be doing a giveaway starting tomorrow. Everyone who signs up, we're going to be giving away some Keon Coleman jerseys. So everybody who signs up is going to be entered in. And we're going to give away a couple of, authentic, real Keon Coleman jerseys. We've now switched over from our former communication platform. We are now on Discord, and that's allowed us to do some really cool things. I know on the way home from training camp, Eric did a live discussion with the guys. It was like his own, cover one pass call-in show of people coming in asking questions. I know you liked it because he validated a lot of things you were saying and made you sound smart.
For real talk, I told my wife, like, she hates when I brag about being right, because it doesn't happen a lot here at my house, right? It happens plenty on the internet and but I was like, Eric got on after camp and he was basically just like running through a checklist of confirming a ton of the stuff I've said in the off season, and is looking like I'm going to be insufferably right here. Going, hopefully, as long as everyone stays healthy, knock on that mahogany of yours. Yes, it was nice because, but it was also cool to get some of the insight. It's hard to tweet out certain things, so being able to like have that voice interaction and talk. And I got in there and was like, hey, can you explain some of the looks, specifically our conversation about safety? Like, what are the safeties doing? And is there some of that interchangeability? And then he would answer the question. I'd be able to ask the other question right behind that, versus that conversation that happens on Twitter isn't always nuanced and in depth. So super fun piece that I'm looking forward to. I'm definitely going to utilize it. Yeah. And I used to do the Twitter spaces. I'm just going to jump in Discord and talk
now
to
that Friday morning Twitter spaces will be there. Same thing. Let's say we do sign Justin Simmons. That's going to be my first reaction. I'm going to jump in there and talk to those guys live. I'm going to the preseason game on August 10th. That's my plan for the drive home. I'm just going to sit there and talk to everybody on the drive home and talk about all the different stuff that I saw and all the notes of what I took away. So make sure you're checking it out. It's really, really cool. Lauren ran into Eric at the bars when he was
I miss Lauren on Twitter
grabbing some food. We miss you, Lauren. So make sure you check it out. You can see the link in the show notes below. Cover1.net/OnePass. Come and support us. It's the best way to support us and help us out. We're going to keep bringing more and more cool things to you, and we're giving away Keon Coleman jerseys, which is fun.
Yeah.
All right. The last piece of the show before we close out, I watch all the press conferences. It's good filler this time of year. There's not a ton of takeaways. So just some quick one-hitters. Joe Brady had an awesome hat on. I don't know where he got it, but he had
Eric Wood. He got it from Eric Wood.
So he mentioned that he saw, I don't know, like is Eric Wood, is that Eric Wood's company? It was super clean white and it had Mafia in Bills colors and script, but upside down in an arch, and it just kept catching my eye over and over and over again, and I loved it, and I want it, and I need to find it. And
I
someone
got it
on the
right here
internet
for
who's
you. I'm
listening to
sending
me,
it.
someone send that to me. I need one of those in my life. I
Sent
don't
it
wear
to
a
you
lot of
right
hats
now.
because, you know, obviously you can't cover the hair. When, you know, I don't wear a lot of hats, but when I do, I like to have nice hats, and I like that one.
I hate it. This is going to be where we disagree. So it's like there's a trend in golf hats where they just like huge giant letters. Nate Geary wears them, and I think they look stupid neat, just so you know. Like huge giant letters. These are other ones too. Like it's upside down. It would be a perfect hat if it was right side up, like the way the Mafia is written. I don't understand it. I'm not hip, so that also checks out. That it makes sense that I wouldn't understand a good looking hat, but I think the hat on God's on pretty
It is nice.
dope.
The hat you have on is nice. It is
And
nice.
so, but it is clean. It's a
It
super
is
clean
like
looking
it's
hat.
such a crisp white, and I like that. I think hats today get a little busy with the logos
Yeah,
and the side
for
stuff and the
sure.
back stuff. I love it that it's like all clean white and just the letters, and I am going to purchase it.
Yeah, go get some
I am going to
OxyClean.
have it. I'm
As
going to
a
have it.
owner of many white hats, get some
Okay.
nice
Okay. Good call.
OxyClean
That's a good
because
call.
you're going to be cleaning your hat. But yes, no, I sent you the link. $37. It's yours.
I love Ed Oliver's press conferences because a lot of the guys are like they know the beats and they know like kind of the cheesy questions they're going to get asked, and they kind of play along with it and they just answer back because they realize, hey, you got a job too, and whatever. I don't really get why you're asking me this, but here's what you're looking for to do your article. And Ed doesn't care at all.
No.
So like, what do you mean? No, I don't want to do that. Or no, like he
Ed's
suffers
super
no
authentically Ed Oliver.
It's fantastic. Like
Yeah.
his annoyance with some of the questions he gets asked just crack me up because I can tell like they're just trying to write an article about this and just need you to comment on it, and he
don't
doesn't
want to.
care. He doesn't
Nope.
care.
I love it. He's so just him. He's just a country
Just
boy
very
who
authentic.
comes out and plays football, and he has to do those pressers. So he's just going to be himself.
Yeah.
I love it for him.
Speaking of which, I think that Dion Dawkins was similar to that early in his career, and now has gotten more comfortable in his skin. I don't think he's not all of a sudden like a super professional, polished, formal public speaker, but he's a lot more comfortable in his skin, and I like seeing him come into his own and whatever he wants that to be. I think that he's now, he's kind of become, with that wave that left, like he really kind of is the elder statesman of the team. I know Reed's been here longer, and I think Reed does carry some respect in that room, but I think, outside of, Josh, I think Dion is the leader of this team and has really, I think I like seeing him step into that role more confidently. And he's still going to have fun and kind of be his own, his own version of himself, whatever he wants to be. But I know Eric got a sneak preview. Brandon Thorne had him as the number 9 overall tackle in the league, as a top 10 guy. And I think there's a lot of people who tried to push back on that. We both had him in that range, and me hearing that Brandon Thorne has him there tells me that everybody else can. I don't care what you tell me. If Brandon tells me that he's a top 10 tackle, he is a top 10 tackle.
Yeah. And anyone that talks about him coming into OTAs or whatever, fat and out of shape, I don't want to hear it. I'm over it. I don't care. He always shows up and plays.
That's what he looks like.
He's just that
his
dude.
body. That's what his body is.
To your point, like I do think I have a tough time sometimes being patient with people. But one thing I will say about Dion is he still has some weird ways in which he talks and some of the like stumbling over some words. But I don't think I've ever seen a player work so hard at his speech. Like he came into the league with serious issues with speaking. And I know he talked about publicly working on that. And to even like address it and talk about it publicly shows like,
and like was vulnerable in that it impacted his confidence.
Yes. And to be able to have that conversation shows so much about a person, but to work at it, like as an adult, is so hard. Like I know kids that are working on it and going into speech therapy classes and stuff. And that's hard as a kid, but that's the time to do it. Yeah. Like as you're learning those things, to go back and do it as an adult. And really put your mind towards it. Like my hat's off to Dion Dawkins for going through that, because we've seen so many players come through that, like you hear them on, and it's like hate to be rude, but I can't understand anything you're saying. And this is terrible. Get you off the mic. He has gotten to the point where like he's on NFL Network and he's being constantly asked to do these shows. So kudos to you, Dion, for going through that, being vulnerable. It takes a real man to kind of do those kinds of things.
One last one that I had a little nugget from. I always like Rasul Douglas when he speaks. I wish they put him on the mic more. I think he's really smart. I think he's really thoughtful. He also is. He's not annoyed or impatient, but he also like isn't going to tolerate.
He was a little annoyed.
Fluffy questions.
Yeah.
Like he, if you ask, he's almost like Belichick, where if you catch him with a good, smart football question, he'll talk for 5 minutes and he'll give you a really thoughtful, cool answer. But if you ask him like fluffy nonsense, he doesn't have time for it. The one thing I liked is he got into a little back and forth about Keon Coleman. And talked about that, like, no, like you could tell he respected that he put in work. And he said, but he couldn't get his mind, or he just talks. And he said, and they're like, oh, he talks trash. Like, no, he just
talks all the time.
He just won't ever shut up. He just talks and talks and talks and jokes. And they're like, well, what do you mean he's telling jokes? No, while we're playing. And he's like on the play, and he turned and whoever was like, yes. And like you could tell he was so like, yeah, the dude like tells jokes during routes and is joking while we're running plays. And it just warmed my heart even more that I've actually had friends here in Cleveland who have asked me like, hey, do you think this is a shtick? Do you think this is real? Do you think and I said, I don't know if it's going to work out. I don't know if it's going to end up, because that stuff gets old real fast. It's not cute when you're playing bad. It's not cute when you're dropping balls. It's not cute when you're doing that. But there have been guys like a Marshawn Lynch who have been able to be that kind of different kind of character their whole career. And it was very lovable because they were good. If you're good, it's awesome. I said, so I don't know if it's going to work, but I will tell you, I don't think it's a shtick. I think he just is a character. I think he is kind of naturally funny, and the most reassuring thing was hearing Rasul Douglas be annoyed by the fact that he's telling jokes while he's running routes and on the field, and it warmed my heart even more.
Yeah, no, he's definitely who he is, and I don't blame. I would think if I was on the team, I'd feel like Rasul too, of like a little like, yeah, no, he just won't shut up.
He just won't shut up.
It's cute to get the clips of it as a fan, but yeah, I'd be like, oh my God, dude, just shut up. Who was it? We saw Micah Hyde a couple years ago talking to somebody in the defensive backfield. And he's like, dude, you just got to shut up sometimes. It was like on one of those embedded. He's like, you just got to.
Oh, yeah. You caught they caught him on the sideline.
Yeah.
Or whoever it was. I don't remember who it was.
Maybe but Trey. It is endearing.
But Trey when he was younger.
Yeah, it's endearing for sure.
So anyways, obviously a lot more good than bad. I know there's anxiety around the safety position. I think otherwise it's been a pretty healthy camp so far, and we've had a lot of positive flashes. I'm really, really excited. There's been a lot of buzz about the defensive front. I know you've talked about that on Twitter and in other places about how maybe we see more on the front seven. We've been so coverage heavy for the longest time here that maybe we start to flip the other way. And you talked about some fun, exciting things that maybe we'll talk about next.
Talk about how good Vaughn looks.
Pressure. Yes. And then the final, you have it over your shoulder there. Hearing Eric, who is very cautious with his praise. Eric doesn't throw around a lot of flowers. He said multiple times, like, no. Vaughn is back. Like he looks bendy and like the crazy otherworldly alien guy coming around the end. That is the crazy stuff. Now they talked about Ed Oliver has looked just as good. Daquan Jones has looked just as good. People have talked about Dwayne Smoot as like the sneaky signing of the offseason. Ed Oliver couldn't gush about him enough. He's like, I don't even know how we signed this guy. Like, how was this guy available? He's just out there making plays over and over and over again. Having that compression where there's always going to be a guy opposite. They actually have been kicking in Dwayne Smoot as the pass rusher next to Ed Oliver in those sets. And that kind of idea where it's Gregory Rousseau, Ed Oliver, Dwayne Smoot, and Von Miller, and you have three guys who can just collapse the pocket and Von racing around the edge to take away any escape and to be able to close it out.
Looking a little better than I thought too.
Yeah, man, there's some really AJ Epinesa, like there's a chance that this front is a little more special than what we realize, and that's a lot of fun.
Love it. Love to see it.
I don't remember anybody talking like that, so we'll have to see. That's
I'm
a new
excited.
organic thought that hasn't come up before. All right, guys, this has been a ton of fun. We're really excited for this season. Like I said, we have the things going on with OnePass. We can't be more thankful of our friends over at William Mattar Law Offices. They've been so good to us. They're going to be with us all this season. And now our newest sponsor added on, BetUS. You're going to see them across shows on our platform. You'll see them on the Film Room, on Disguised Coverage, maybe over with me in the Greg Tompsett Sports Show here with Cover One Buffalo. We're going to be doing all kinds of fun stuff. Check us out. We're going to do some posts for them, share some different things. As we do our matchup show all season long, we're going to use them for our odds and some of the different things that are coming up here. So all kinds of cool things, a lot of fun things. Aaron, any final thoughts for the people before we close it out?
I'm super excited. I'm about to take off for a couple of weeks, so you won't see me as much as my annual sort of get out of town before the season starts. But I'm real excited for the scrimmage. Hopefully I get in town in time to get on Twitter and check out the scrimmage. And for real football to start, dude, pads came on, like real popping happened this week. Like football's for real back. I know we said it last week, but now we're back in football. And that's exciting. So I'm excited to get ramped up and get into the season with you, Greg.
Awesome. I can't wait, man. On behalf of our fantastic producer, Chris Kepner and Aaron Quinn, I'm Greg Tompsett. You've been listening to Cover One Buffalo. We are powered by BetUS, and we are